Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Steffi Luting and I'm trying to teach you some tips and tricks of how to draw the characters from Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss as a fan artist with decades of drawing experience. Last week we started this series with Nifty. I will repeat some of the basic drawing tips and tricks just because you may be new to this series, but if you wanted a fully comprehensive grounding, please go back and watch that video. It has all the basics laid out for you. So yeah, just a reminder, I like to divide my page up into at least quarters. For this one, I'm actually going in eighths. And that's because I've decided I'm going to do a slightly different dynamic. I'm not going to do 4 heads. I'm going to do 3, one of which is slightly larger just to give more of the detail so you can see what I'm doing. Now, we are doing Charlie Morningstar this week, and for Charlie, the easiest starting point is with 4 circles. 1 for her head, 1 for the top of her hair, 1 for the middle of her hair, and 1 for the bottom of her hair. That's if you're doing a standard Charlie. I will show you her with a slightly different hairdo in a little bit. But this is the very easy starting point for Charlie, and it makes her very readable as a character almost instantly. Now, with Charlie's eyes, they can change a lot, but they are generally ovals, and you will see this. I struggle a little bit with her pupils while I'm drawing this, but she is slightly cross-eyed, like the irises are just sort of like in the middle, so you need to take that into account when drawing Charlie, because otherwise she looks a little bit off, a little bit weird. So you can see I'm kind of building up the features around the face, reframing it, just kind of like adding in the little details that make Charlie who Charlie is. Now, one of those details is her eyelashes. Eyelashes in Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss are incredibly important to making the characters readable, on the female characters specifically. Now for Charlie, she's kind of got like a bubble, but also with a little tiny like flick. So it's like a bubble at the bottom, like an ovally bubble, then a little flick, then a round. And you need to look at the line work around the eyes. It's not even all the way around. It's obviously thicker at the top of the oval than it is at the side of the oval, which just gives her a more Hazbin-y look. Charlie's hair is also incredibly important to making her readable, as I said before, specifically the shapes. So do take your time getting those shapes correctly. It obviously isn't all round. She's got a little bit of a sharp edge at the top, and then it goes down into a more roundy shape. And then she has this stripe going through her hair. Now, it doesn't always hit the edge of the line work. It's kind of in the middle, but to the left of center. And the line gets thinner and thicker depending on how close it is to the tied bands. Those tied bands are semi kind of circular. They go round, and it's really important to do that. If you do them as a straight harsh line, it looks a bit weird. So we're talking about Charlie's hair, her signature flick or fringe, it 9 times out of 10 dissects her eye. So when I'm drawing, I like to pull through the fringe, through the eye, the line of the fringe through the eye, so it becomes a consistent line, and then remove the line afterwards when I'm doing the line work. Moving on to a slightly different Charlie this time, I decided to do her look from the end of season 2 because that's probably my favorite look for her, and I love that hair. That hair is more of a big oval, but it has like a weird little tail at the end where her hair kind of like peters out. Those kind of angles are so Hazbin-y. They go thin and thick in weird places. So pay attention to how that is being perceived. Also with Charlie's face, she has a very pointy chin. So make sure you get a sharp point on that chin. Otherwise, she just looks too roundy. Now we know how to draw Charlie's face. We can add in those elements to a full body Charlie. Charlie is one of the taller characters in Hazbin Hotel, so you need to take that into consideration when planning out your page and your poses for Charlie. I've kind of done her doing a little bit of a lean so I can fit her in on this page here, but sometimes you have to get a little bit creative with where you put legs, arms, etc., because she is quite a long, tall and lanky character. I'm now going in with my 0.05 Ahu fine liner so I can create a clean line where I'm colouring up to, and it's thin enough that I can cover it with thicker line work later on. So if I make any mistakes here or smudge anything when I'm colouring, I can get it all later. As I said last time, it's important that you let the ink dry, especially when you're using coloured fine liners, because they can smudge quite a lot. I recommend 24 hours, but 2 hours also seems to do the trick. And you can tell if your line work is going to smudge significantly when you're rubbing out. If you can tell that it's being smudged all over the place, you know you're in trouble. These are the colours that I use for Charlie's skin. These are the multiple colours that I use for her hair. And these are the colours that I'll be using for her suit. As I said last time, I like to use at least 3 colours on every section, sometimes more if it's a larger section. As Charlie has white skin, I like to go in with a really pale purple and grey just to give her skin some dimension. Otherwise, it just looks very bland next to the rest of the colouring. And I always go in with a little bit of extra purple in the shaded areas just so it kind of pops even more. For Charlie's hair, there is so many colours that I use here, and that is because her stripe in her hair is a different colour to the rest of her hair. She's kind of got like a muted creamy yellow as her base, with the stripe being a very, very pale yellow. What I do is I tend to use the colour that I use for the lightest part of her general hair as the shading colour for her stripe. Now, when colouring, you need to think about the highlights. So around the band, you will have the darker colours in her hair. So you know where you're tying up a ponytail, you'll have a darker indent. So that's where you want your darker colours. Pulling out to a lighter colour in the middle and then back into a darker colour. Same around her face, you'll have the darker colours there where the shadow is falling from her face. For the little flick, don't forget that she's got pink under there. It's not red, it is like a really dark cherry pink. So make sure that you colour that one correctly. And you could add a little bit of lilac-y purple in there just to give it a definition and some shadow if you want to. I'm going to add that with some colouring pencils in a little bit. And this is just a reminder to also use a gradient on your blacks too. It can really make them pop. You don't just have to use solid black, you can use black that goes into grey. You will see what I mean when I colour in the bow tie and the hair ties here. Adding that little bit of variation in colour really just give it some dimension. We have our colour palette, we can go in and colour our other 2 Charlies. Just a reminder that if you are enjoying this video and would like to see more Draw With Me's, more Helliverse art, then don't forget to like and subscribe. I have so much more to share with you, and I'd really love to see you in the next one. I'm now going to be going in with my Ohu'u coloured pencils. These are oil-based, which makes them incredibly nice to blend, but can be quite tricky to do line work over the top of. So I have got a new set of pencils that I'm going to try out on next week's one, just to see what effect I get from that. So as I did with Nifty last week, I used a little bit of lilac, a little bit of cream, and a little bit of white to give Charlie's skin even more dimension. If you notice that when I was doing the skin earlier, it looked so much darker, and that's because alcohol markers are quite wet when you put them on, and they dry so much paler. So don't be afraid to slap on a bit of colour with a very light alcohol marker, because they will dry a lot paler. Always test it out, always do your swatch tests. Now for the shading on Charlie's hair, I was a little bold with this one. Now I was intending to use Colour Theory and using some purples to shade her hair, but I don't know what it was. The blues were calling to me this day, and blues are obviously adjacent to purples. They could make it a little bit green and a little bit mucky, but because these pencils are very pigmented, I feel like it really, really works here. If you are concerned about using anything within the Colour Theory wheels, I would suggest that you stick to one that is directly opposite that colour. So for this, it would have been purple for the yellow of her hair, but I really feel like the blue worked here, and it just gave it a different dimension, especially because I used lilac on her skin. Now that we've got our colouring pencils picked out, we can go into our other Charlies and colour them too. Now it's time for my favourite part, the part where I feel like it all comes together, the final line work. I do this with a 0.1 fine liner, so it's slightly thicker than the fine liner that we used at the beginning, just because I feel like it can hide a litany of mistakes that I made on my original line work. I also put a scratch pad next to me whenever I'm doing line work, because pens and fine liners can get clogged up, especially when using pencils that are so oil-based such as this. But here is the final piece. I have gone round with an acrylic marker and outlined my Charlie in yellow, because again, I just like having those lines super crisp. But what do you think of my Charlie study? Will you be using any of these tips and tricks? If you do, please don't forget to pop your results on my community page. I may be sharing some of your artwork in the next video. And who would you like a tutorial of next? Let me know down below in the comments. And finally, don't forget to like and subscribe.